Today, we're talking about two free agents that potentially could fit the Washington Commanders and help them next season. And so, before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to hit that like, hit that subscribe, and follow the channel as we talk nothing but Washington Commanders football daily. And so, with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it as we are talking about two free agents that potentially could be a very good fit here for the Washington Commanders and perhaps really helps them out this season. And so, we're talking about Trevon Diggs at the cornerback position, and then we're talking about Ethan Pocic at the center position. And so starting with Trevon Diggs. And so Trevon Diggs just finished last season with the Green Bay Packers after being released there by the Dallas Cowboys. And so the first link to the Washington Commanders is that Trevon Diggs is from the DMV. And so it would be a homecoming if he were to play here for the home team. And so I think that that would be an interesting story. But the next link here is that with Trevon Diggs, he was coached up there by Dan Quinn with the Dallas Cowboys. And so he had his best season in 21-22 there. And that is where he played in 16 games. He had 43 solo tackles. He had 9 assists, and so 52 total. But he had 11 INTs, and he also had 2 touchdowns as well. And so he had an absolute great season there under Dan Quinn as his defensive coordinator. And so, he has shown really some upside as a cornerback. I think that there's been some flashes since that season, but he's really dealt with the injuries and things like that. But, when you look at just the Washington Commanders and where they are at the cornerback position, I think that this is a situation that perhaps could maybe make some sense here for the Washington Commanders, especially if you're talking about buy low. And then also, too, you're looking at the fact that there could be a high reward in this situation here. And so I think that you're betting on the upside. And I think that when you look at, Trey Amos, you look at, just Mikey Samra, you look at just Amik Robinson, I think that this unit very much does need a little bit of a veteran presence here. I think that Trevon Diggs would do so. I do like the fact that he is familiar with Dan Quinn. I think that that kind of gives me, a little bit more of a good feeling that this would work out because he has been under Dan Quinn before. And that, look, if Dan Quinn and Adam Peters bring him into the locker room, they trust that he would be a good fit here with just really what they're trying to build with the foundation. But I would see, where the potential is to not necessarily go ahead and sign him. One of the things that Trevon Diggs has really struggled with at times is giving up the big plays. He's only played in about 21 games over the last 3 seasons due to the injuries. And you just wonder, with the locker room off the field stuff, is it something that would be a distraction for the Washington Commanders? But again, I could certainly see where the Washington Commanders would want to bring in another veteran cornerback here, especially if this is a buy low situation and you're just really betting on the upside, because again, they are going to need, I think, some additional support there. Do they do it in the NFL draft? We'll find that out coming up here, but I think that that would be a solid option here for the Washington Commanders. And so next, I think a very solid option here, and I think that this is something that I'm probably a little bit more on board with right now, and that would be Ethan Pocic. And so I think that with Ethan Pocic, he would be a player to me that I certainly would want to consider here for the Washington Commanders. And so just taking a look at a tweet here back in 2023, he was listed as one of the top as far as pass blocking efficiency. You see that. And so again, this is a tweet here from 2023, but just in looking at his body of work here, you're looking at a player that has been in the league for 10 years. He will be 31 years old. And so this is not necessarily something that's going to be a long-term fit, but with his ability, to pass block and to be available for games and stuff like that, I think that this is something the Washington Commanders certainly should consider here. I know he has battled with some knee and Achilles issues here as of late, but if you're looking for somebody that can come in and just compete and perhaps maybe get this job, I think that he certainly could be that one, because right now, I think according to Dan Quinn, I think that it sounds like that the team is leaning towards Nick Allegretti, who started the last 2 games this last season. They also have Julian Good-Jones. And then you also hear the rumblings here that Brandon Coleman might be in the mix. And so one of the things that, just is really around the center position, and something that I think is around this roster, and this is something that Adam Peters and then also to Dan Quinn have talked about, is really competition. And so when I think about that, why not add Ethan Pocic out there and give you some more competition? I think that there's the possibility that maybe he could win this job. And I think that maybe he could be maybe the center that David Blough is looking for in this offense, because, you know, there's the talk that, hey, you would want your center to be versatile, be able to pull and everything else. You know, do you think that it would be a center like Ethan Pocic? Again, this is a guy that has played in, quite a bit of games. And then also, to one of the other stats that I saw for him is in 2025, he only gave up 2 sacks, didn't give up too many pressures as well. And so 97 out of 114 games, not bad for a reliable piece that could possibly be an anchor right there on the front line. And so we know how important that is. You know, that is your quarterback on that line of scrimmage. And so, you know, just adjusting protections and things like that. And so would David Blough and then Adam Peters and Dan Quinn want to bring in an experienced center like this? I think it's great for competition. And I think there's the potential that maybe he could win that job as well. And so anyway, you guys let me know in the comments here what the Washington Commanders could do here. These are 2, again, potential free agents that I think that, look, they would come in and certainly check the box here when you're looking for some veteran presence and then perhaps some leadership here. And so again, do you believe that Trevon Diggs coming back to the Washington Commanders would be enough here? Do you feel like that would be a good move? It would be worth it to go ahead, low cost, and you're thinking about just the high reward and the potential of him getting back to perhaps, I'm not going to say 11 INTs. Can he get back to maybe 3 to 5 INTs? Just stay on the field for you. And again, just give you that veteran presence there and give you some of that versatility that I think that this secondary is going to need there defensively, again, to go along. Again, I think with some tough corners, but they're going to need some support here. Again, you got Amik Robinson, you got Mikey Samerstiel, you got Trey Amos, as well as the corners that we know that we're highlighting coming back. But I think that they certainly could use some more back there. And then lastly, what are you thinking here about Ethan Pocic? Is this the type of player that you would want to bring in at the center position? And so not taking it away from the Commanders as far as going out and drafting a center. But if they're not going to draft a center, I would like to see them go with an experienced center to go out there and compete. Like, I would much rather you go ahead and bring in a true center like Ethan Pocic here, let him compete and see if he could possibly win that job there. Because again, I think that he might be a pretty good fit here for the Washington Commanders and what they're trying to do there with their offense. And so anyway, you guys let me know in the comments here what you guys are thinking about these 2 potential free agents that the Washington Commanders could perhaps buy low on and really get some high rewards on. And so anyway, you guys let me know. And as we always say, go Commanders, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.